Welcome, everyone, to the THEEMTSPOT Blood Pressure Podcast. I'm Samuel Harrison.
And I'm Olivia Harper. Great to be back.
So today we're doing a deep dive into some pretty fascinating new research. It's stirring things up a bit regarding high blood pressure management.
Yeah, it really is. For ages, it's just been cut the salt, hasn't it?
Exactly. That's been the main message. Reduce sodium.
And look, reducing sodium is important, definitely beneficial for many, but this new research suggests it's maybe not the whole story.
Oh, how so?
Well, it seems it's not just about what we take out, but potentially just as much about what we need to put in.
Okay.
And that thing is potassium.
Potassium. Huh. So you mean instead of just worrying about salt, I should be thinking about, like, eating more bananas? Feels a bit counterintuitive.
It might sound that way initially, but the research really points towards a more, let's say, balanced view of how blood pressure works in the body. Less like sodium is the single villain and more like this intricate dance between sodium and potassium.
A dance. Okay, like a balancing act.
Precisely. This newer thinking suggests we really need to look at both sides of that equation. It's a dual nutrient strategy, if you will.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So how does potassium actually do this? What's the mechanism behind it helping blood pressure?
Right. Well, it works in a couple of really neat ways. First, it helps relax the walls of your blood vessels.
Okay.
Think of them like hoses. If they're stiff and narrow, the pressure inside goes up, right? Potassium helps them relax, widen a bit.
Ah, so blood flows easier, less pressure.
Exactly. And second, it actually helps your kidneys to excrete, get rid of excess sodium in your urine.
Oh, interesting. So it actively helps flush out the stuff that raises blood pressure.
That's the idea. It supports the body's natural process for dealing with sodium.
So it's almost like sodium pushes the pressure up and potassium helps nudge it back down. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's a really good analogy, actually. They work in opposition in some ways, but really it's about the balance between them. When you have too much sodium and not enough potassium, that balance is off.
And that leads to problems.
Yeah, that imbalance is linked to a higher risk of hypertension and, other cardiovascular issues down the line. Maintaining that electrolyte equilibrium seems pretty crucial.
All right. You've convinced me potassium's important. Where do we find it? What food should people be looking for?
Good question. The research highlights some really common ones. Bananas, like you mentioned earlier, they've got about 358 milligrams per 100 grams.
Okay, standard banana.
Right. Potatoes are actually quite good, too, around 421 milligrams.
Potatoes. Huh, didn't expect that.
Yep. And avocados, even better, about 485 milligrams.
Wow.
And leafy greens are fantastic. Raw spinach is a real star here, packing around 558 milligrams per 100 grams.
Spinach. Seriously, that's way more than a banana.
It really is. And sweet potatoes are another good one, maybe around 337 milligrams. Also delicious.
So maybe instead of just skipping the salt, adding a big handful of spinach to my salad is a really good move.
That's exactly the kind of thinking this research encourages. By consciously adding more of these potassium-rich foods, we can help counteract what seems to be a common issue in, typical Western diets.
Which is, what's the issue with Western diets in this context?
Well, they tend to be really high in sodium. Think about it. Processed foods, fast food, frozen dinners, salty snacks, even some breads.
Yeah, convenience food often equals salty food.
Exactly. They're loaded with sodium for flavor, for preservation, but they often lack significant potassium.
So we get loads of sodium, but not enough of the potassium to balance it out.
Precisely. You end up with this skewed sodium to potassium ratio. And what's really striking is that some researchers now think this ratio might be a stronger predictor of high blood pressure and heart problems than just sodium intake alone.
That's a big deal. So it's not just the salt number, it's the salt compared to the potassium.
That seems to be the emerging picture. And interestingly, the research noted that perhaps due to dietary habits, men might be at a slightly higher risk from this imbalance. But the flip side is they might also stand to gain a lot by making dietary shifts to improve that mineral balance.
Okay, so let's talk about that. If someone's diet is maybe a bit high in sodium, can bumping up potassium actually, counteract some of that damage? Can it help fix things?
The evidence suggests it certainly helps, yeah. It supports those natural body processes we talked about, getting rid of excess sodium, easing tension in the blood vessels.
So it pushes back against the effects of too much salt.
It helps mitigate them, yes. Over time, increasing potassium can definitely contribute to lowering blood pressure. This seems especially true for people maybe in the earlier stages of hypertension.
Right.
Of course, it's always smart for everyone to, be aware of what healthy blood pressure levels are. Organizations like the American Heart Association have clear guidelines on normal and high ranges.
Good point. This is all really practical stuff. So, looking ahead, what does this mean for, say, doctors or general health advice? Are we going to see a shift?
It's quite possible. We might see future recommendations putting more emphasis on increasing potassium-rich foods alongside the existing advice to moderate sodium. It's not replacing it, but adding another
A
dimension.
more proactive approach.
Exactly. And there's likely to be more research, too, looking into how dietary potassium interacts with blood pressure meds, for example, or its long-term impact on heart health overall.
So, less focus purely on restriction and maybe more encouragement about what to add to your diet for heart health.
That's a great way to sum it up. It's about a more holistic picture of diet. And for listeners, it's a good prompt to think about easy ways to get more fruits, vegetables, those potassium powerhouses onto their plates.
Yeah, this has been genuinely eye-opening. It feels more empowering than just don't eat salt. There's something positive you can do.
Absolutely. Understanding this potassium-sodium interplay is, I think, a really valuable tool for anyone managing their blood pressure or just aiming for good cardiovascular health.
Well, that just about wraps up our deep dive for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to the EMT Spot Blood Pressure Podcast, the big takeaway. That balance between potassium and sodium is key. Focusing on adding potassium-rich foods, think bananas, spinach, avocados, could be really beneficial.
My pleasure. Thanks for the great discussion.
And thank you all for listening. If you found this helpful, please hit that subscribe button for the EMT Spot Blood Pressure Podcast so you don't miss future discussions.
Yeah, and we'd love it if you could like this, leave a comment, maybe share it with friends or family who might find it useful.
Definitely. And don't forget to follow the EMT Spot on our social media channels for extra tips and updates.
Stay informed.
Until next time, take care of yourselves and stay healthy.